technologies that we can bring into our company.
It's a really good place to kind of get a lot of information in a short time span. And really kind of go from a low-level understanding to really high-level understanding.
Sign up for the labs early because they go fast. A lot of interesting things to learn, but it's definitely worth it to come out here and just spend some time with the experts and talk to other people in the industry.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Red Hat webinar. Before we get started with today's presentation, there are a few items to quickly mention. You should see a taskbar at the bottom of the screen. Each icon is assigned to a particular element of today's webinar. If you're not sure what the icon does, hover over the icon with your mouse and a box will appear to tell you the function. Also, next to the slides window, you should see a blank Ask a Question box that allows you to type a question. After you type the question, click Submit to send it to our presenters. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar, and our presenters will address as many as possible following the presentation. You can submit any technical questions related to the webinar platform here. Please close down other browser windows or applications that might be splitting your bandwidth, including VPNs, as these may interfere with the audio or video stream. If you experience any connectivity issues, please refresh your browser. Today's session is being recorded, and all registrants will receive an email within 1 to 2 days of the event with a link to view this presentation on demand. Now I'm going to hand it over to today's first speaker so we can get started with the presentation.
Hello everybody, my name is Jimmy Alvarez, and today we're going to talk about getting smart and proactive stability and security and compliance with all the management solutions from Red Hat. As I said, my name is Jimmy Alvarez, and I'm a Principal Technical Marketing Manager here at Red Hat. And today I'm also joined by John. John?
Hello, everyone. I'm John Spinks, Senior Principal Technical Marketing Manager in the Management Business Unit. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, John. All right. So today we're going to be covering a few things. We're going to be talking about Red Hat Insights. We're going to walk you through what Red Hat Insights is. Then we're going to go through a live demo. Afterwards, John is going to take us to the Red Hat Smart Management Solution, and he's, of course, going to give us a live demo as well. And then at the end, we will have our resources and next steps. Please do make sure that if any questions come up as you are watching the presentation, to go ahead and put them in the chat. We will address those as they come. In 2019, IDC did a study for us to look at the business value of Red Hat subscription software. They surveyed a range of customers and found that Red Hat solutions help ensure IT performance and help make operations more reliable and agile. So these companies were better able to support businesses initiatives, and they saw some of the good financial metrics as well. When you have competing pressures, especially in the areas like lowering costs and ensuring uptime, you need solutions that can bridge the gap. Current management practices are key to contributors to reducing risks and better success. And so we created 3 important guiding principles for Red Hat management products. Number 1, they enable customers to manage the Red Hat platforms. We also try to simplify the management by removing the friction from our customers. And we all drive automation across multiple teams with in the introduction of multiple tools like, for example, a Red Hat Ansible. And so this is our Red Hat management portfolio. You can see our guiding principles reflected here. Today, we're going to focus on Red Hat Insights along with Red Hat Smart Management. We will overview these solutions, and then we will take you through some demos. And then we know what we're looking forward to seeing you taking on these products. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with Red Hat Insights. Red Hat Insights helps you identify risks that are present on the system in your environment. In many cases, Insights can identify risks before they impact your environment. This is why it's a predictive analytics. Insights also offers prescriptive analytics, Once Insights detects a problem, it not only tells you all about that problem, it also tells you how to fix that problem. In many cases, Insights also provides an automation method to fix these problems, leveraging Ansible products. This knowledge is based on the experience that Red Hat has accumulated upon supporting our customers and technologies for over 20 years. Red Hat Insights really provides, identifies known risks and configurations within your environment and provides a tailored and automated remediation steps on how to mitigate those issues. We also look beyond just the operating system. We look at certain applications, as you'll see as we go through the demo. We basically identify risks for availability, performance, stability, and security as well. Insights looks across 4 main areas, as I mentioned, when it evaluates for risk: the performance, security, availability, and stability. This means identifying for performance things like your network speed is running closer to 100 megabits per second instead of, say, a gigabit per second. Then Insights will make recommendations like basic check your network port and settings and network cables. For security, this could be any high impact or commonly encountered CVEs, including things like privilege escalation, where Insights might recommend that settings be changed or packages or the kernel be updated. For availability, this could mean things like OpenShift operations failing when insufficient CPU or memory is reserved, where Insights might recommend that the CPU and memory reservations might be increased. And finally, for stability, this could be things like decreased stability and performance due to file systems being over 95% capacity, and Insights might recommend increasing your free space. When talking about Insights, it is common to focus on security aspects only, as that is the most pressing risk that drives you to adopt Insights. But Insights really is more than just security. Insights has over 1,000 rules at this moment, and more are being added constantly, given that it's a SaaS product. You can kind of see here how these rules stack up in the different categories, with availability kind of leading the way at almost 44%, followed by security at 15%, then stability at 27%, and performance at 14%. Typically, you will have these issues across all these 4 main areas, and when you address them all, it helps make your systems more stable, secure, and reliable. Here's a couple examples that we like to share. One customer had an issue with their Oracle RAC environment that really had been going on for over 6 months. They had multiple tickets not only open with Red Hat, but also Oracle. And nobody could really find what the issue really was. They finally decided to give Insights a try, and they immediately identified that the number of issues that, when combined, led to an instability that had been experienced. Insights really made it easy for them to quickly identify and resolve the problems that had already spent months trying to troubleshoot. This is a great story about how Insights will look beyond just the operating system. Another customer really was considering Insights, but swore that all of their systems were up to date and really didn't need or see the value on Insights. They decided to give Insights a try, and they discovered that 20% of their systems were really not actually as up to date as they thought they were, and they were up to risk. The big thing to take away here is that Red Hat has over 20 years experience of supporting Red Hat products. Insights really brings all of that experience together. All of the rules that we have created for all of the different categories are really based on support cases and things that we've learned over the years that will help your organization move forward and keep your system secure. The best thing about Insights is that it's completely free. If you are a RHEL customer today, you are completely entitled to use Red Hat Insights. We support anything from RHEL 6.4 and above, of course, all the way to 8.1. If we're going to talk about later how to actually set it up, it's very simple and very easy. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how we set up Insights and really how to get started with it. So the first thing that you need to know is that Insights, in order for you to run Insights, you require a small client. This client runs in your RHEL host, and basically, if you have 6.4, anything from 6.4 all the way to 8, you will have to perform a simple yum install insights-client command. Now, this is Insights client is on all the default repos, so it will be very easy for you to obtain that client. If you are running Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 and above, then the Insights client is already pre-installed unless you select a minimum installation. If you have anything above the minimum installation, then all you need to do is just go ahead and turn it on. After you turn it on and or install the client, the next step is to run the registration. Now, keep in mind that in order for you to have this registration successfully, you need to make sure that your host, your RHEL host, is subscribed with us. So it has to have a valid active subscription in order for you to, before you can perform this command. We have a very quick link here to get started. If you wanted to take a look, it's very easy as you can see here. And we also have some information around the Insights client on the man pages as well. Here's 4 things that you really should know about data collection within Insights. The first thing that you need to know is that only portions of the logs are collected. So we do not collect a full log within your system. If you have worked with support in the past and perhaps the support agent has asked you for an SOS report, you might notice that that SOS report, it's a little bit big, right? Insights only looks at less than 1% of that same SOS report data. So the data is very small, and we keep it very, just to look at the specific rules and match those with it. The data that you upload is also fully customizable. So for those very security concerned customers that might not want to share things like host name, IP addressing, or perhaps any rule that they might feel that might contain any kind of data that they don't want to share with Red Hat, you can exclude that. So giving full power to your customer as to what is being sent. Very important to know here. The third thing for you to know is that information is fully encrypted. So everything that is being sent to RHEL is encrypted not only at inception, so when the file is being created, but it's also during transport to cloud.redhat.com. So it's completely encrypted end to end. And the data itself remains for a very short period of time. So if you wanted to go ahead and schedule perhaps your data sending of to RHEL, you can do this. It's a simple cron job that runs, so everything can be scheduled, right? We keep that data for 24 hours. So normally the client checks every 24 hours. You can customize it, as I mentioned. And even then, if your system goes completely offline for whatever reason, we keep that data for about 14 days. And about 14 days after that, we go ahead and get rid of that data. The client itself all communicates via port 443. So again, for those very secure customers that are very concerned about having to open firewall holes to their environment, it's just a very simple port 443 outbound. The client itself does not speak unless it's not a two-way transmission, basically. The client only generates from the host, will send the file to cloud.redhat.com. Cloud.redhat.com does not speak to the client itself. Okay, great. Now that we have that background, let's go ahead and go through a quick demo of Insights. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And I am now in Red Hat Insight. So as you can see here, we are in the main landing page of Red Hat Insights. As I mentioned, it's a collection of multiple services. John will walk us through some of the other services that are available. The first thing that you can see here is the overview of your environment. So you can see here that we have created this heat index map that kind of shows you your top critical issues all the way to your low issues. We also have a breakdown of those rules based on those categories that we discussed earlier. And you can kind of see here at the bottom on how to get started. So let's go ahead and dive, as I say that I'm assuming a persona of an administrator, and I'm going to look at my systems. So I'm going to go ahead and, of course, look at my critical things first. So if I go ahead and look at my critical things, the first thing that I notice, I have two rules that have been specifically hit for these issues. Both of them are critical. You'll notice here the amount of systems and also this little checkbox around the Ansible. What that means is that these rules specifically have an Ansible playbook that would allow me to fix this issue on scale. This is very handy for things like, for example, these 12 systems. Instead of having to me manually going to fix this, you can just create a playbook based on that. So if I go ahead and expand this DNS mask issue, you'll see here that I get some details on what the issue is. I also get a link to the knowledge base article that will send you over to an Access redhat.com page with more information about that issue. It also gives me that total risk that we talk about, as well as the risk of change. So what will be my risk to implement this change? This will help you as an administrator kind of when you're putting in a ticket, for example, to kind of make this change in your environment to really assess the risk properly. So if I go ahead and take a look at the systems that are affected, you can kind of see here, it gives me a list of all my systems that have been affected and are part of having this issue. If I go ahead and say, I'm gonna, this rule is, seems like a very issue that I should fix. So I'm gonna go ahead and select all of my systems here, right? You can of course select them individually if you like. And the moment I do that, I get this Ansible remediate button kind of light up. If I go ahead and click on that, what this allows me to do is to either create a new playbook or add it to an existing playbook. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and name my playbook of webinar, for the lack of a better name. And then here you can see what the action is that I'm taking for the specific this specific rule that I've hit. So I'm going to go ahead. The resolution is update the DNS mask package and restart the service. It's a very simple rule, but of course you can see the the value of this as you will have more complex rules. You see that I'm targeting 12 systems, and if I needed a reboot, if this rule required a reboot, I could turn this on and off. This does not require that. So when I go ahead and click create, it tells me that the playbook has been created, and it gives me a link to that remediation. When I click the link, it automatically takes me to the remediation screen, and then from there, it gives me the link to that system, and it shows me the action that I'm taking and as well as the systems that I'm doing. You can go ahead and download that playbook from here, and you'll notice that it gives me a YAML file that is ready for me to actually go ahead and download and execute. Now, you're not required for you to have Ansible Tower to execute this playbook. You can leverage the Ansible engine, which is the freeware version, the open source version, that you can execute this playbook and kind of automate it that way. Of course, if you have Ansible Tower, there is a lot more capabilities that you can do. There is error checking that you can add to it, and you can add more steps to make it easier for you to be able to resolve whatever issue you might encounter. Now let's take a look a little bit on the rule side. And as I mentioned earlier, we have over 1,000 rules. Currently, we have 1,044 rules. Every time I demo this product, I see a new rule, which is fantastic. We're always on top of the latest and greatest main issues that affect the systems out there, right? Obviously, constant battle back and forth. But you'll notice here, you can all see that we added rules about 4 days ago, and we have some other rules here around, there's been a few days after that. You can also see some rules that do not have the an actual Ansible playbook. Some of these, you have to kind of fix manually, right? We do provide some kind of steps around this. If you go into the knowledge base article, you'll be able to see that. Also, if you look at the system itself and if the system is affected, so for example, I can look at this system, I can see here that we look at multiple things in order to determine that we have a rule hit, okay? And we provide you the full steps to resolve said issue. We also provide you with a lot of additional information around on how to fix that issue. Again, we provide you with all of the tools here for you to be able to see and clearly fix any issues that you might encounter. Now, moving on to Topics. Topics is a new addition to Red Hat Insights. What Topics allows you to do is really kind of filter down some of these rules. Because we are expanding these rules and growing these rules, obviously, it makes it a little bit hard to kind of focus on specific things. Remember how I said earlier that we look way beyond the operating system? You can kind of start seeing that in here. So for example, we have topics for customers that might be running SAP HANA, customers that might be running the RHEL instances on AWS, some that might be running SQL, and so on and so on. So you can kind of see the pattern here. And what this allows you to do is look at those very specific topics that might be too relevant to you. So for example, say that I am an Oracle administrator and I want to see what are some of my issues that I have with my Oracle databases. You can see here that I have about 52 systems affected. So if I go ahead and click this Learn More button, what this is going to tell me is this is the rule that I hit, and this rule is a moderate rule with a high risk of change, and I have 52 systems that are affected for it. I can go ahead and take a look at those 52 systems, and then if I look at those, then it gives me some of the steps to kind of fix those, right? Obviously, we have multiple issues with the system, but you can kind of see the pattern here. Topics is really a great way for you to be able to kind of home in and focus on very specific issues without having to kind of go through and sort through the specific systems. Now, one thing that's very important to mention here as well is the inventory. Now, the inventory is something that is shared across the multiple cloud services. So when John starts talking about the smart management, for example, you'll notice that the inventory and the remediations are both the same. So this is a shared service that lives across the cloud, the redhat.com. Notice that I have about 38,000 or so systems available here. So we have tested this at a massive scale. We have customers with over 100,000 systems that are registered and providing rules and no value. Again, it's a great system for you to be able to really see and make sure that all of your systems are all up to date and ready to go. One thing to also mention really quickly is that we provide full-on documentation for your for the API, and I apologize that I have to log in here. Obviously, I had a login timeout here, but you can kind of see here that we have a full API available for it. So if you wanted to go ahead and integrate Red Hat Insights into, say, a third-party system like ServiceNow, for example, you could do that. You could go through the API and you could build an integration into a system like that. So all of it is fully documented all through the Swagger interface. Okay, great. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my colleague, John Spinks, who's going to talk us through Red Hat Smart Management. John?
All right, thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate you showing the awesome demo of Insights there. Hopefully that'll inspire some people to take a look at it. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about Smart Management, which is kind of the next step past Insights. These products are very closely related together. Red Hat Smart Management as a product family includes Red Hat Satellite, which many of you may be familiar with, and the cloud management services for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And that's the part we're going to focus on today, are these additional SaaS offerings. If we look at what's in the box with Smart Management, this is offering you some additional management flexibility. You can use Red Hat Satellite. For a long time, that has been our premier management product for managing RHEL systems. That does things like content management, patching, configuration, subscription management, and provisioning. It can handle on-premise, disconnected environments, environments in the cloud. So Red Hat Satellite is really a do-it-all product that we have for RHEL management. The cloud management services are SaaS applications, and they're great for a cloud-native first organization or for folks that want to have very specific use cases addressed, like vulnerability, compliance, and drift. Each service handles its own use case and may look at a little different perspective than what Satellite does. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about these cloud management services. These are specifically for managing RHEL hosts, just like Satellite. We don't care if those instances of RHEL are on-premise, in the cloud. We treat them all the same, and then we do focus on the functionality that customers need. So the vulnerability app is very focused on the topic of vulnerabilities, CVEs, and how to address it. So let's go into a little bit more detail on each of these services included. The first one is vulnerability. So what vulnerability does for us is remediates all CVEs or common vulnerabilities and exposures with Errata. It gives us the full list and really allows you to assess the impact of a vulnerability in your environment. Say a new really high profile CVE gets released, you know, your shell shocks or your heart bleeds. You can go and search for the CVE number and just say, hey, I need to know how many systems are affected by this CVE. Enter the CVE, search for it. It's going to list every single system that is affected by that CVE. You can then generate a report of that, take it onto your security team and say, here is our profile of the systems that are impacted by this CVE. And then for many of them, we do have Ansible playbooks available to help you automate the remediation of them. So vulnerability is going to allow you to assess and monitor, to remediate, and generate reports. And this should be a common theme as we look at the other services that we have as well. But you may be asking yourself, Jimmy just talked a little bit about Insights. He talked about the security rules that we have in Insights. Doesn't Insights already do this? Well, kind of, because vulnerability is very security focused. It looks at all the CVEs with Errata, whereas Insights looks at rules that have stability, availability, performance, as well as security impact. So this is more about scope and scale. The vulnerability service only looks at security, and in terms of scale, it has about 22,000 CVEs. It's all CVEs with Errata. The next service we have is the compliance service. The compliance service leverages Open SCAP reporting. You generate your Open SCAP report on your system. You upload that into cloud.redhat.com using the Insights client. That enables you to assess and monitor your level of compliance or non-compliance to a certain policy. Also helps you to generate reports of that compliance or non-compliance, and then finally remediate those issues via Ansible playbooks. The next service that we have is drift analysis. If you've been following along for a while, you may have previously heard this called system comparison. The idea was that we just compared one system to another system. We still have that capability with drift analysis, but what we also enable you to do is create a baseline. So you can identify maybe your gold standard VM, create a baseline off of that and say, this is what I expect all of my systems to look like. And then you can compare your systems either to that baseline or to other systems. And that will help identify for you when a system may have drifted from your expectations. You can filter out all of the individual profile facts, so you can search for just the things that are important for you, and then you can generate reports, of course, identifying any areas that may have drifted or may be in compliance. So let us take a look at Cloud Management Services. I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm going to start myself in cloud.redhat.com. If you've never been there before, this is what it looks like. We've got a number of tiles that are available. Insights is what Jimmy showed you earlier, but I'm going to take a look at this Cloud Management Services for RHEL. We also have OpenShift Cluster Manager that allows you to register, manage, and install all of your OpenShift 4 clusters, and the Ansible automation platform that allows you to connect a tower cluster or clusters to cloud.redhat.com so you can see all of the analytics available in one place. I'll start with Cloud Management Services for RHEL. I'm going to click Open. I'll start here at my dashboard, and I can see some quick reports for vulnerability as well as compliance. So I'm going to dive right in to the vulnerability service. This service is showing me all of those CVEs with Arata in my environment. I think Jimmy showed you the inventory earlier. We've got like 30,000 hosts in this environment. Across all of those hosts, I've got 2,641 CVEs that I have tripped. So that's not number of systems, number of individual, that's just the CVEs that I've hit. I can go into my filters, and I'm going to uncheck hide CVEs that do not affect my inventory. Just uncheck that. And we're currently at 21,888 total CVEs with Arata that we have. These are what we look at with the vulnerability service. I'm going to rehide that just so we can focus on what actually affects my environment. One of the things we'll notice here is our CVE, our publish dates. We got some here that are pretty new, our impact, critical, base score, and the number of systems exposed. We also have over here on the right 2 columns. One's called business risk, and the other is status. In the CVE itself, based off of our experience working with customers, we do have this impact, and we have it set as critical because we say, hey, this is a really important CVE. You need to get it addressed. If I expand it out, of course, that one doesn't have a description, but most of them have descriptions. But you can say, hey, you know, to me, this one is not as important. It's not critical to my business. I don't consider it that way. So we can go in here, we can edit this business risk, and we can say, you know, to us, this is really a medium. Any kind of justification you like in here, and click Save. And that's going to update that column so you can set a risk that is more impactful to your organization. You can also set a status, and we can do this at the CVE level. So maybe we can look at this status and say, hey, even though this is a medium, let's go ahead and get this one scheduled for a patch across all of the systems that are in our estate. So put that in. Status is now scheduled for patch. So for these 89 systems, it's just saying we're going to fix it. I'm going to real quick adjust the CVSS base score here. I want to look at the most impactful system I have. Here's the CVE 9.8 CVSS base score. We definitely need to get this addressed. 168 systems exposed. And if I expand here, I can see this is a security regression. I've already set my business risk here as medium, but there's a lot of systems here. I'm not going to be able to handle these all at once. So I'm going to delve into the CVE itself and take a little bit more of a look at the affected systems and the CVE itself. So this is showing me more details on the CVE. Business risk, I've set that as medium. I have status as not reviewed at the full CVE level. I have a publish date and a link to the CVE database. But if you're looking at this, your understanding of the security rules and how CVSS works, maybe you don't want to delve into that CVE database to understand all of the attack vectors and what's going on. So over here on the right, we now have this CVSS vector, which is really quickly giving us a highlight of the impact of this CVSS. If you understand what this means, this is going to save you a lot of time. If you don't, you tap the question mark. And what this is just summarizing for us is the attack vector is network, complexity is low, privileges are none. So that just gives us a real quick synopsis of the CVSS score for those folks that are very familiar with how those work. If I scroll down my page here, I can see I've got a number of systems that are impacted by this. Maybe I happen to know that this IC3.example.com, this one's a lab system. I'm not so worried about this one, so I'm going to head the status here. I'm going to say I'm not going to use my overall CVE status. I want to individually address, and I'm going to call this one, no action, risk accepted, lab system. I'm not going to worry about fixing this one yet. But then maybe I happen to know this is a satellite 6.4 host. Ooh, I got to fix this one. So I'm going to go into my edit status. And I'm going to go ahead and select this and call it in review or scheduled for patch. We'll just go ahead and plan to patch this one. We got to make sure that satellite system is up and running well. So we can go through all of these. We can review the status, and at any time when we're ready to print this out, we can just export it out as a JSON or a CSV, and we can send this on to our security team for review, help build our plan. If we want to fix this across all of our systems, there was an Ansible playbook available. So just like you saw Jimmy do with Insights, I'm going to do a select all here. I've selected all 168 systems, and I'm going to remediate that with Ansible. In the last demo, you saw Jimmy created a playbook for webinar. I can add this to the existing playbook, or I can create a new playbook. I'm just going to add this to the existing so you can get a look at it. Click Next. Here's my CVE. My resolution is update the packages. It does require a reboot that affects 168 systems. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And this is going to create that playbook for me, and I'll be able to see that in my remediations page. It was at the top of the screen, but I didn't scroll down fast enough. So I go here into my remediations. Oh, it's 168 systems. I may have moved on before it was ready. We'll see it added here to this remediations here in just a moment. I want to move on to compliance. Compliance, as mentioned, uses OpenSCAP. So I have a number of policies that are already available. Most customers we talk to only have 2 or 3 policies in their environment. I happen to have a ton of them set up here. I'm going to take a look at my standard system security profile that I have. It tells me that I have 3 systems registered. 2 of the 3 systems are above the compliance threshold. I'm going to look a little bit more into this. It gives me a description of what it looks like. I can read a little bit more on that description. It tells me about the policy I've selected. It also gives me a minimum threshold for compliance. I currently have that set at 94%. So let's explain what that means a little bit. We expect that you are probably not going to have 100% compliance to every security profile. If you do, that's great. Set your threshold for compliance at 100. But if what you find out is there's certain rules within a policy that your business doesn't allow you to adhere to because you actually have to use these systems, we allow you a threshold compliance score so you can say, yeah, my average is about 94% or 96%. If it's lower than that, I really need to know about it. I really need to take a look because we may not be meeting some rules that are really important to us to meet. So in this case, I have 3 systems. One is 98% compliant, one is 96% compliant, and the third is 92%. So I'm failing 4 rules here. This is a little higher than I expect. So I can go ahead and look into this system with a little bit more detail. It's considered non-compliant because I have passed 46 out of the 50 rules. So that's under my threshold. It's only 92%. If I go down here, here's the list of all of the 50 rules that I see. So I can look at them all in detail, or what I can also do is filter this and hide my past rules. So now I'm only looking at these 4 that have failed. And I can go into them in detail, disable the odd job daemon. I can expand that. Here's my the description, the rationale, and there is an Ansible playbook to fix it. In fact, in 3 out of the 4 that I have, there is an Ansible playbook to fix these issues. So I can go ahead and select these ones that have a playbook. Click Remediate, and just like we saw before, I can either create a new playbook, I can add them to an existing playbook. Here's my 3 actions. In this case, a reboot's required. They all, just addressing one system at this point. And if I don't want to reboot, forgot to mention this before, I can turn auto reboot off or leave it on. Click my Create button. I've successfully created my playbook, and I can see that in my remediations page. The third service that we have is drift analysis. Notice it has a collapsible area here. So I have 2 underlying capabilities within drift analysis. I have system comparison as well as baselines. I'm going to take a look at baselines first. So baselines allows me to create a profile of the system. So I can create a baseline either completely from scratch, or I can create a copy of an existing baseline that I can then modify. So like from November to December, I created my November one a while ago. I cloned that to create my December one. And then I could also copy an existing system. So I can say, you know what, I want ic1.example.com to be, oops, wrong one. I want ic1.example.com to be my new baseline. So I can highlight this and just say this is IC system, the new baseline that I've created. And so I expect all of my systems that exist to follow this baseline. Here's an architecture, a BIOS release date, a BIOS vendor, and because I copied a system, it includes things like, you know, the cores per socket, the memory, all of that information is included in these facts. If you create your own baseline from scratch, you could just have one or two facts in here, like, hey, I want a baseline that really focuses on making sure that my kernel version is at a certain level. You could create that very simply. I'm going to move on now to system comparison. It just starts out in this blank page. And what we need to do is add either systems or baselines. And what I'm going to do is start by adding this new IC baseline that I selected. And then I'm going to go in here to maybe IC2. I'm just going to put in IC. So if I go down here, IC2, IC3, IC4. Let's select 3 systems and a baseline. I'm going to click submit. And what we'll see here listed on the screen is, here is my baseline IC systems, and then IC2, IC3, IC4. And we can compare here real quickly on the differences or the areas where the systems are the same. So my default is show all the facts. I'm going to uncheck same and uncheck incomplete data, and I'm just going to focus on what's different across these systems because I want to bring these other systems into compliance with what I expect out of my IC1 system. So I can see here real quickly that I need to go increase the memory on these systems. You know, I got a standard here, my baseline of 3.7 gig, but these others are around a gig. So I definitely need to, you know, get these up to 4 gig systems. My Yum repo, in my baseline, I have a RHEL 7 server optional enabled. I don't have that enabled in the other systems. And then install packages, I can also look in here and I can see that I have some differences in the packages and the versions that are selected. So now that I have this, there's no automatic remediation today in drift analysis. This is mostly an informational exercise. At this point, we would take this out and we would go ahead and export this into a CSV. At the bottom of the screen, I've now got a CSV with this particular filter that's all saved. So that was a quick look at the cloud management services and the features that we have within it. All of these use the same Insights client that Jimmy showed you and talked about in his portion of the presentation. So when you set up your system for Insights, you're ready to use cloud management services. We'll talk a little about resources and next steps. To get started with Insights, if you're already a RHEL customer, you have Insights available at no additional cost. Only thing you need to do, go to the Getting Started page. It will walk you through step-by-step setting up Insights. If you're a RHEL 8 customer, the client's already installed. You just need to register. If you're a RHEL 7 or older customer, you need to install a client. It's included with the base RHEL repo. Just install it, register, you're all set. To learn more, redhat.com/insights. You can always email us at insights@redhat.com. We have a list of resources available on the screen. These will be available to you after the event. Definitely check out our overview FAQ as well as the technical FAQ. And there's information here as well, like our IDC white paper and our documentation links. For smart management, again, a lot of the information that Insights has, especially around the FAQs, it's the same information that we have for smart management. Setting it up, getting it working, that's all the same information. You got to get that Insights client working, and then smart management, you're just available to leverage the cloud management services. We have a web page, documentation, and a management and automation blog where we put new information up. With that, we're going to go check the Q&A. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be answering your questions now.
Thank you so much, everybody. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. Really appreciate your time. We got tons of questions here through the Q&A, so I'm going to go ahead and read a few of some of the questions that we got to make sure that everybody kind of knows about them. All right, so one of the questions that we got was, what about CentOS? Can Red Hat Insights manage those instances, right? So today, Insights only manages RHEL instances. We do not manage any other kind of Linux operating system. We are mainly 100% focused on RHEL systems. We also had another question around satellite, which was, is satellite subscription mandatory for the best experience of Insight? And the answer is no. The satellite is not mandatory to have the best experience for Insights. You could use Insights directly from cloud.redhat.com, and you can just download the playbooks directly from there. Please do note that if you do decide to use satellite, the data that Insights uploads to cloud.redhat.com is automatically proxied through satellite. And you can also enable and manage everything directly from there. Another question that seemed to be very popular was, which country is the data held in? So obviously, given that Insights leverages the Insights client to gather the information from the host, which is the data that we use in order to match the specific rules, most of the people have some concerns around security. Let me rest assured that the data is being encrypted not only at inception, but also during transport, and all of the data is actually being hosted directly in the U.S. As a matter of fact, we see that some of you are in Europe, and the data, we have a lot of customers in Europe as well, financial institutions leveraging the solution. So rest assured that we are looking directly at that. And again, for now, is everything hosted directly in the U.S. Okay, let me look through some of the other questions here, see if there's one. So yeah, some other questions around the detailed data dump of the data that's actually being collected by the Insights client. So if you go ahead and actually, we have an article there that's available on access.redhat.com, but you can go ahead and search for Insights data security, and if you Google that, you will see this article pop up. We cover that in great detail on that article. Okay, and let's see here. This one is a good question as well. I'm not sure if I fully understand the differences between what is addressed by Insights versus the vulnerability services in Smart Management. Could you please clarify which type of security issues will not be covered by Insights but will be covered by the vulnerability service? The answer is that Insight only really covers a small percentage of your CVEs. We have about, I want to say, 60 or 70 CVEs today that are really identified as the high-risk ones. So the ones that will make the 5 o'clock news, those are the ones that we do cover within Insights. Vulnerability really looks at all of the vulnerabilities and errata data, which is about, 22 or 23,000 CVEs that would really look at. So you can kind of see the differences between the two and how we look at a much more expanded view with the vulnerability within Smart Management. Okay, and let me see here. Can you set a baseline for software installs? So actually using drift analysis, you can create multiple baselines and really compare the baselines with your host. You can also create a baseline manually from an existing baseline or an existing host or VM. So yeah, you can definitely use that to kind of have a baseline or a template, if you will, for your operating system. Okay. And here's another great one. Are compliance thresholds available to be set within Satellite 6 as well as on cloud.redhat.com? And the answer is that the compliance services and its capabilities are only currently available on cloud.redhat.com. Unfortunately, this is not available through satellite. As stated earlier, Insights is the only product that's currently really available within satellite UI. Okay, let's see. If I have an enterprise subscription for 10 systems, can I register Insights for 20 systems? That's a great question, actually. So the subscription obviously has to be managed, has to match one per one. So no, you wouldn't be able to register more systems that you actually have subscription for, unfortunately, not today. Does this integrate with the cloud development tools in AWS or Azure? Actually, we do integrate with workloads on those clouds. So if you have anything in an AWS or Azure cloud, and you would like Insights to kind of manage those instances, you can kind of set it up. It's a little bit of a different process than when you would set it up on-prem, but it's very easy. We also have rules or topics that are specifically focused on Azure and AWS as well. So we look at very specific problems that occur when your RHEL system is hosted on the cloud. Please do know that these the systems that we do support in the cloud are the golden image that are provided by RHEL. Okay. Will the baseline install the software or just collect information? The baseline will make the machine changes for the install, correct? This is more towards software development question. So the baseline install will just kind of collect the information, right? It will look at all of the things that you have on that host and kind of match them and match them directly there, right? Obviously, if you need to make the changes, you will have to do those manually. Okay, let's see. Trying to see if there's any more questions here. I think we're pretty much. Oh, here we go. Who writes the Ansible's remediations? Can they be customized? Can I upload mine? So all of the Ansible remediations are actually written at the same time that we publish the rules. So the rules are usually they're all written by Red Hat. You unfortunately can't upload yours, but you can modify it. So when you download it directly from cloud.redhat.com, you can go in and modify the Ansible playbook as you desire. It's just a regular YAML file that you get. Okay, great. And that seems to be it as far as questions. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. Really, really appreciate your time. I hope this was very, very useful, and I hope that you guys go ahead and try Red Hat Insights as well as the Smart Management Suite. Again, Insights completely free to you if you are a RHEL customer with an active subscription. Thank you so much.